Okay, wait. I'll just ask the timekeeper to press the bell again so that you can start. Yeah? Please proceed. Yeah.
Floods, droughts, heat waves, extreme storms, and wildfires are going from bad to worse, breaking records with alarming frequency. And the people in developing countries bear over 90% of this burden through death, disease, destitution, and financial loss, and yet are least responsible for creating the problem. A very pleasant afternoon to the House of Intellectuals, respected speakers, sir, and everyone present here on this auspicious occasion of 41st Manik Chandra Barooah National Conventional Debate. I am Masum Priya from Hindu College, University of Delhi, and as I stand here today, I feel very proud proposing this motion on climate crisis. But first of all, panel, we need to understand how the world looks like in our paradigm, right? So the world which we are proposing is the one in which the climate crisis is an issue that is increasingly causing worry and anxiety among the countries and the communities worldwide. As we witness devastating impacts like increasing sea level, droughts, floods, extreme weather conditions, its consequences have been felt most strongly with regards to the developing societies. Now I'm going to put forward before you 3 levels of analysis to prove how this climate crisis has far-reaching implications on A, the geopolitics, B, the economy, and C, the sustainability of the developing societies. With this in mind, let's move on to the first point. Forcible appliance of climate change policies of the developed societies onto the developing countries. Panel understand that the developed societies, owing to their position in the world order, could very well enact several climate change policies with restrictions equal to or more on the developing countries. They have done this in the past, they are still doing it, and they will continue to do it in the future. Now, why is this problematic? Is because we need to understand that the developing societies are still in a stage of progression and have not reached the development level of the global north. So it is inevitable that they would find it difficult to adhere to these restrictions. This could very well create power imbalances among the developed and the developing societies with a clear edge to the former, giving rise to geopolitical tensions and conflicts. This brings me to my second point, which is adverse effects on the crop production. This point very well relates to how the economy of the developing societies are affected by the climate crisis. If we take the case of India, we know that India is an agricultural country and a large part of the economy depends on the agricultural produce. India also caters to global food supply by crop exports, which essentially help its economy in the global race today. Even when we speak generally, in the case of developing countries, we need to understand that crops form a very intricate part of the economy of the developing countries. Because understand that only when the developing countries are able to fulfill the basic needs of its population, can it look around to expand in other areas. But with the growing climate crisis and uncertainty in rainfall, the crop production in these developing countries like India has been severely affected, which have had negative implications for its economy. This brings me to my third and the last point, poverty, displacement, and rehabilitation. So panel, now I'm going to prove to you how poverty, displacement, and rehabilitation caused by climate crisis affects the sustainability goals of that country. Understand that developing societies already have a huge chunk of poor people, and as a result of droughts and floods, they get pushed into an even darker future. Take the example of Uttarakhand floods of 2014. What happened there is that the money which could have been otherwise used for advancing goals of sustainability are spent on rehabilitation and rebuilding of the lives and property of the people. And with this in mind, I would like to conclude by saying that as I stand here today in this beautiful state of Assam, situated in the lap of nature, I think it's high time we think about saving the magnificent Brahmaputra that flows through Assam. Because climate emergency may be a race we are losing, but it is surely a race we can win. Thank you. Thank you for inviting us again. It's an honor to be a part of this debate.
Thank you, Masum. We just wait. Are there any questions? Anyone? Just one question, because it can't be a Q&A session. Okay. There are no hands going up. I can call the next speaker. Thank you very much, Masum.
Thank you.
Thanks for your intervention. The next speaker is Xli Barooah, who will speak against the motion. And Xli is from Guwahati Medical College? Yes, Guwahati Medical College. Just Just wait for the bell, Gaurish. Your time starts now.
Good,
Proceed.
good afternoon, respected speaker, sir, and my esteemed panel of delegates. At the very beginning, I would like to bypass the blaming game and look into solutions. Crisis, in one way or the other, is inevitable. He who is blessed to live is also cursed to die. And today, we face this curse as a great climate crisis of our time. Firstly, let us acknowledge that the climate crisis is a global challenge that affects all countries regardless of their economic conditions. However, weaker nations can find opportunities within this crisis by clever use of strategic approaches. Disorder has a unique ability to breed chaos, and chaos is a ladder. It possesses an ability to question hierarchy in a manner even the French revolutionists would feel shy. Navigating through this crisis, India has been steadily strengthening its diplomatic stance by becoming a leader in climate diplomacy. The cooperation and deliberation seen due to this climate crisis has not been seen for a very long time. Such collaboration leaves the door wide open for countries like India to assume leadership positions in their own geographical regions. India, through, as we can see from the G20 summits that are held in our country, and its active participation in several international conferences, India has been and can play a pivotal role in shaping global climate policies to bridge the gap between the global north and the global south. I agree that India has a people-based economy. However, this can be an asset in addressing the global crisis. A large people-based economy means a greater interest in renewable energy, green technology, and sustainable agriculture. India's commitment to sustainability has also encouraged several foreign investments. The government has eased foreign direct investment regulations, and introduction of production-linked incentives encourages foreign companies to establish manufacturing units inside India. In essence, India's strategic approach to the climate crisis reflects a holistic representation of its interconnectedness with the geopolitics, economics, and sustainability of our nation. By aligning its strategies with the global issues of today, India plays a pivotal role for a brighter and more sustainable future. Thank you.
Just in time. Any questions? Yeah, I think I see one hand going up. Introduce yourself, please. I think the mic is not working, is it?
Greetings everyone, this is Jeet Pathak from Proposition Bench.
Yes.
So my question is very simple. Sir, your opening line was, one who lives is definitely meant to die and crisis is inevitable. Sir, my question is very simple. From this statement, are you providing an excuse for not addressing the grief issue of climatic crisis?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for a valuable question. My approach today was that instead of playing the blaming game, we should accept that climate crisis is a major hindrance in our day-to-day lives. And I would just like to answer your question through a very good analogy, I would say, is that when there is a rain, there are people who get drenched and there are people who use an umbrella. So if we take the climate crisis as the rain in my metaphor, I would rather like my country to be the people who are selling the umbrellas. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Sabin Kalita, Sabin Kalita will speak for the motion, Pragjyotish College, Guwahati. Sabin Kalita. Yeah. Thank you. Please wait for the bell to ring and then you proceed. Yeah. Please
Honorable
proceed.
Speaker, sir, and gentlemen and ladies of the House. Firstly, much have been discussed already here and many points have been put through. So I'm feeling like I know what's expected of me, but I don't know how to do it any differently. Though what I perhaps do is really try and pay attention to the arguments that have been put by the opposition today. Someone argued if that the economic situation has really worsened by the climate crisis, or is the climate crisis even affecting the economic of the developing societies? Well, I stand to offer you an Indian example. A report by RBI's Department of Economic and Policy Research states that climate change due to rising temperature and changing patterns of monsoon rainfall in India could cost the Indian economy 2.8% of its GDP, and adapting to climate change to cost India 85.6 lakh crore by 2030. Well, the point of discussion is that whether climate change affects developing societies along with its economy, sustainability, and geopolitics. And it's not even a question, it's a fact, it's a statement, it's an assertion. And so I'll position myself to speak for the motion of the House that yes, indeed, climate change affects developing societies like India with far-reaching implications on their geopolitics, economies, and sustainability in the global race today. Honorable Speaker, sir, first let us address the geopolitics. Climate change can lead to resource scarcity, such as water and arable land, which can trigger conflicts over these essential resources. Someone was asking for examples of conflicts between countries. The melting Himalayan glaciers have led to dispute over water resources among countries like India, Pakistan, and China. Also, rising sea levels and extreme weather events can force people to migrate, leading to refugee crises and potential border disputes. Also, developing nations like India often find themselves in precarious position when it comes to climate change negotiations. One of the fat big politicians of the United States of America went on to say that India and China are the reason of filthy air pollution. Now, let us consider the economic ramifications, sir. Agriculture forms the backbone of many developing economies, and climate change poses a significant threat to this sector. Droughts, floods, and unpredictable weather events causes crop failures, which directly impact food security and economic stability. Of the 124 million people in the world who face crisis level of acute food security, 76% were affected by climate shocks and extremes. Last but not the least, sir, sustainability is the cornerstone of any nation's development. In the context of climate crisis, sustainability becomes even more critical. Developing societies like India must balance their development aspirations with environmental responsibility. The need to transition towards renewable energy, implement sustainable agricultural practices, and invest in clean energies become paramount. Failure to do not only jeopardize their own sustainability, but also contributes to the global climate problem. The climate crisis is not a distant problem that affects only a few. It is a global challenge with profound implications for developing societies like India, which are struggling to balance their development needs with the urgent demands of environmental sustainability. Geopolitics, economies, and sustainability are all intertwined in this complex issue. It's totally evident that the climate change affects developing societies mercilessly. Therefore, it is a moral duty to support these developing societies while they thrive, while they not just only survive, but thrive, where climate change don't hamper the economic prosperity, sustainable development goals, and where geopolitical cooperation prevails over conflict. I would like to quote Ban Ki-moon, former United Nations Secretary General. He said that climate change is destroying our path to sustainability. Ours is a world of looming challenges and increasingly limited resources. Also, one quote comes from Pope Francis itself. Climate change represents one of the principal challenges facing humanity in our day.
Thank you, thank you. Yes. Any questions? Okay, I don't see hands moving up.
So you mentioned that renewable energy should be focused. The country should focus on more renewable energy.
Sorry, I'm not.
He's asking about renewable energy.
You specifically said that the country should focus more on renewable ways to inculcate renewable energy, right? So, sir, but how will you justify that the renewable energy produce less net energy because it has low EROI, energy return on investment, and non-renewable energy cannot meet the current demand of the energy? This is a statements given in the EROI report. So, sir, how will you justify that a developing society like India can switch to renewable energy sources when it is most core, it is most expensive, it is more expensive and gives less return?
Look, sir, just because something which is not giving us returns doesn't mean that we'll choose something which harms us. That's not the point. And already it has been mentioned by many climatic activists, and even Bill Gates himself, he said that green premiums are very much expensive. But that doesn't mean we'll stop using them, or we'll stop starting to use them just because they are giving less returns in compared to others. Also, the only solution we can have is innovation. We need to innovate things, and we need to bring in more resources which will help us to give more returns.
So follow
Thank
up.
you. Thank you. No, this one question, please, because we're running behind schedule. Next speaker, Subhashish Chaudhary, will speak against the
Thank you,
motion.
Speaker, sir. Thank you.
Subhashish Chaudhary will speak against the motion. Subhashish is from Assam University, Silchar.
Honorable, sir, may I start?
Yeah, please proceed.
Honorable Speaker, sir, it is rather sad to see that my worthy friends in the Treasury bench today rally behind a cause that is bereft of merit. Honorable Speaker, sir, the developing countries are in no way affected adversely by climate change in comparison to the developed ones. Or in other words, I would like to say the crisis actually benefits our sustainability. I know this is a very radical thing to propose, but there are some very good reasons that support this logic. Number one, the Green Climate Fund, established under the UNFCCC, provides the developing nations with monetary support from the developed ones, and only in the year 2019 and 2020, an whopping amount of $7.2 billion and $5.6 billion respectively were donated or contributed by the developed ones for the underdeveloped and the developing nations to battle climate change. The arguments which are presented on the floor of the House today regarding the geopolitical scenario are somewhat ignorant of the ground realities. The reason I say this is because if we follow most of the conferences or the meetings held by the global bodies or the intergovernmental institutions, most of the times the global south had pitched its voice against the global north for initiating the process of climate crisis. So it is not us who are on the back foot in the geopolitical scenario regarding climate crisis. It is the first world countries or the global north which is in the back foot, and we are on the front foot. So if anyone has to see the far-reaching implications on geopolitics, it is the global north that has to feel the heat. Number three, the technological advancements starting from solar panel, wind turbines, LED lightings to seawater purification technologies, the low emission transportations, such discoveries or such technological advancements take decades of scientific research and dedication. However, the developing nations are gathering those technologies from the developed ones through technology sharing on the name of battling climate change. I am not saying that this is a bad thing, but obviously the developing nations or the underdeveloped nations are benefiting from this climate crisis, obviously by the inculcation of new scientific technologies within their home countries. I see no good reason for us to play the victim card when we are already receiving so much from the developed nations to battle climate change, which we, however, rightfully deserve to receive as well. To conclude, climate change no doubt affects all of us. If the global temperature is to rise, it will rise in both India and England. If the sea levels are to rise, it will affect both Kolkata and Liverpool. The carbon emission, the greenery cover is more in the developing nations. We are receiving financial aid from the developed ones. We are receiving the technological knowledge from the developed ones. So I see no reason to state that the developing nations are likely to feel far-reaching implications because the developed ones are the ones who would be facing the far-reaching implications because they have to battle not only their fight against the climate change, they have to aid the developing nations and the underdeveloped as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Your time is over. I see one hand going up. Can we take the mic to him?
Good morning, everyone. I am Shivang Sinha from Ramanuj Gupta Degree College, Silchar. So you have clearly stated that the developed world is helping the developing world, which I quite agree. But Speaker, sir, I would like to shift the focus of the House to the most neglected region of our world, that is Africa. Just because they are poor, we are ignoring it. So my question to you is that recently we have seen the political violence in Africa caused by drought and desertification. There are UN forces deployed, but they don't have that much autonomy. And recently, France have also withdrawn a major portion of their forces, which were deployed for the security of the sub-Saharan Africa. So can you please tell me on your views on how the developed world is helping Africa to mitigate the climate change and other political unrests?
Thank you. And please be brief in your questions. We have many speakers. Thank you. Yeah.
So I would like to quote two different examples to summarize the thing. First one is the Afghanistan crisis. When the Afghanistan crisis began in the late 2000, so in the early 2000 era, then the US interfered, tried to resolve the issue, but they failed and they left. The excuse that they put forth was that let the Afghans decide for themselves what they want. Similarly, during the Iraq-Syria war, we have seen large-scale destructions by the UN forces, or maybe I should say by the NATO forces. So at this current date, the other forces also fear interfering into the internal domestic politics of other countries. So maybe we should try to segregate the domestic politics of violence from the climate crisis, because even in the case of Afghanistan, even after leaving from Afghanistan, many world bodies have been donating for the general population of Afghanistan for betterment of their situation by providing them with clothes or food or rations. So that is a defined kind of aid. We can provide it for the people, but interfering into the domestic politics of another nation is a defined thing, because we already have examples
Thank you, Subhashish. You made your point. I'll move on to the next speaker, Rini Pathal, who will speak for the motion, Guwahati Commerce College. Rini. Sorry? Subhashish spoke against the motion, right? This is for the motion. Rini Pathal from Guwahati Commerce College will speak for the motion. Yeah. So, will you...
Quote, beneath the sun's relentless gaze, our world in a warming haze, icebergs melt and forests weep as climate change begins to creep. Unquote. A very good afternoon to one and all. This is Rini Pathak, and today I stand before you all to affirm my conviction to today's proposed topic: climate crisis affects developing societies like India with far-reaching implications on their geopolitics, economies, and sustainability in the global race today. Honorable Speaker, now may I have the honor of bringing your attention to the responsible consideration of the interpretation of the topic of this debate. The ongoing climate crisis is something the consequence of which is certainly not local, but rather global. It undoubtedly affects all of us, but particularly, as I'm going to share with you all in the next few minutes, developing societies such as India. Honorable Speaker, according to the latest reports by News India Express, even under optimistic heating scenarios which assume more significant global emission reductions than we're currently on track for, developing societies like India will be subject to intense heat waves that have the caliber of putting millions of people at risk in the coming decade. Beyond the immediate human cost, climate change is perhaps ascertained to be capable enough to undermine developing societies like India's ambitions to become the next global superpower. Honorable Speaker, may I confide upon you here that there was a time when analysts used to question whether China could get rich before it gets too old. But however, developing nations like India's dilemma as of today is whether it can grow the economy and lift enough people out of poverty before they become too hot. As far as now, Honorable Speaker, I hope that my A4 statements are enough for the members of the opposition to question the choice of the motion. And if not, then let me share with you, Honorable Speaker, the economic cost of climate change do not just come from loss of property or life. Heat waves drag down productivity rate and raise fatality rates for people working outside, a major factor in a developing country like India, where almost 40% of the population work in the agricultural sector. According to a World Bank report last year, as much as 75% of India's population, that is about 380 million people, work outside, that is, are exposed to heat-based labor, farming, mining, and construction, but also sectors where air conditioning is insufficient, such as transport and manufacturing. India is extremely vulnerable to job losses, said the report, and by 2030, the country may account for almost 34 million out of the projected 80 million global job losses as a result of heat stress-related productivity decline. McKinsey and company estimates this could cost India as much as 4.5% of its GDP in the coming decades. That is about, Honorable Speaker, $250 billion in the end of the decade. The matter of fact, Honorable Speaker, that must be pondered is that India has a growing GDP of 6.7% as of 2023 and is the 5th largest economy in the world. And if this is the projected condition of India, then think about the other developing countries which are far beyond India. Now, in the end, Honorable Speaker, it is with utmost respect that I leave you and everyone else here with the idea that developed countries historically, who are the largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, have a responsibility to the less fortunate counterparts. Honorable Speaker, only by recognizing and responding to the unique challenges that are faced by the developing countries can we hope to mitigate the climate crisis that are being faced on their population. Thank you.
Thank you, Rini. Your time is over. I don't see any hands going up. Okay, I see one hand going up. Just one question, please, and please be brief.
Ma'am, you are pinpointing on climate crisis, but not on the government policies. So how would you like to explain and address the House regarding your position on the fact that the government has been holding geopolitical meetings through summits like G20, Y20 on various agendas, specifically climate crisis or any other such environmental effects, but on the other hand not caring about the climate or the environment, which in order to hold these discussions, which is in itself double standards. So ma'am, how would you like to comment on this?
Thank you. Please be brief, yeah.
Ma'am, can you please brief your question? It was too long to understand.
Basically, you are pinpointing at climate crisis, but you are not pinpointing at the government actions. The government has been organizing various G20 summits and other such events when they are like they are using like green clothes in order to hide the places that are destructed, like the climate places, natural places that are destructed. So, ma'am, what's your stake?
So essentially, she's asking the role of the government. Yeah, please.
I don't know, like, if the role of the government would be really nice, then we wouldn't be suffering this kind of climate crisis right now. So I don't really have an appropriate answer for this because I didn't really comprehend your question. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I call the next speaker, I just wanted to know that if participants would like to take a lunch break, or do we move ahead? What is the opinion of the judges? Do we move ahead with the next speakers? Move ahead, okay. Yeah, so the next speaker is Chaki G. Bolton. Against the motion. Chaki G. Bolton. Wait, she is from... So just about the last speaker. Just give me a second, Chaki. Let me introduce. Yeah. So Chaki G. Bolton is from All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Guwahati. You're a medical student? Please wait for the bell to go off. Yeah, thank you. Your time starts now.
Good afternoon, respected Speaker, sir, and the honorable members of the House. As a member of the opposition, I will present to you solid arguments why I firmly stand against the motion of the House. But let me first define the context of the debate. What the bill suggests is that climate crisis has far-reaching implications on geopolitics, economics, and sustainability of developing societies like India. But I believe that this is a golden opportunity for India to emerge as a great country in the global race. The best way to approach this is to look at the present situation. Climate crisis is occurring, yes, but our development is still going on. It isn't slowed or hampered due to climate crisis. Speaker, sir, do you really think that we would have developed more if climate crisis hadn't occurred? I'm sure that by the end of my stand, your answer would be no. My rebuttals against the respected Treasury bench, they mentioned that stringent rules restrict us by not allowing us to emit gases for productions. But the catch here is that we aren't forced to enter these pacts. Our able government has entered these pacts of our own accord, and they have very cleverly modified the regulations according to our advantage. For example, India has announced at COP26 that its target is to achieve net zero carbon emission by 2070. According to an article in The Hindu, August 26, 2022, India will boost its economy by this policy by 4.7%. And by 2036, a total worth of $371 billion will be increased in its GDP, and 15 million new jobs will be created. So we have modified this to create a positive impact on our geopolitics. I believe that climate crisis has a more effect on the developed countries, because developed countries have the basis of their industries in developing countries, and it is very ironic that they are telling these countries to reduce their emissions, because in reality, if such bans are put, then their own economy will crash. Talking about economy, I would ask you that that every third person you meet is an environment activist, and I've already told you that 15 million new jobs will be created, so I don't see our economy crashing. Moreover, these developed countries have been asked to provide technological and direct assistance to developing countries, which is a blow upon their economy. Moving to sustainability, a report from Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change in India in August 2022. India updated its NDC, according to which we have an enhanced target to accomplish 50% cumulative electric power from non-fossil fuel-based energy sources. So instead, climate crisis, instead of affecting our sustainability, is rather motivating us to take up sustainable measures. The respected members of the Treasury bench has been so blinded by the negatives that they have failed to see the positives of this. My closing statements: we are taking steps to prevent climate crisis and to find solutions to it. An example is, we know that our planet will perish. Recent example is that we have sent the Chandrayaan-3, and we know very well where that has put India on the global race. I rest my stand here by saying that calamities will occur, but it is our job to not let it have far-reaching implications and find the positives of it. Thank you, and have a great day ahead.
Thank you, Chaki. Your time just got over. Just please wait if there are any questions. Yeah, I see one hand going up. Please be brief in asking your question and introduce yourself. Mic is not working?
Hello, sir. I'm Ruma from Indraprastha College for Women, Delhi University. So the member from opposition bench said that there is no economic implications of climate crisis. But according to RBI's latest report, up to 4.5% of India's GDP could be at risk by 2030. What would she like to say about this?
Respected member of the Treasury bench, if you had listened to my speech, I have already mentioned that the positives outweigh the negatives. By 2036, our GDP will increase by $371 billion and jobs by 15 million, which will lead to an economic boost in India by 4.7%. I've already mentioned so in my stand.
What is the source
Thank you.
of your...
Just one question. Anyway,
what
she's asking
was
for
the source?
This is from an article from The Hindu, August 26, 2022. Thank you.
Right, so I have an announcement to make here. We've had some really interesting speakers, very passionate arguments, both for and against the motion. We will take a short break, lunch break of about half an hour. It's going to be 2 o'clock in the next 2 minutes. So we will meet again at 2:30. We will take a half an hour break, a lunch break, and the House will resume its proceedings at 2:30. The House is adjourned until then.
I request the student volunteers to kindly escort the esteemed speaker and the jury members, along with faculty members, to the Dr. T. Ao Indoor Stadium of Cotton University for their lunch, and also the participating students. You are requested to move to the Dr. T. Ao Indoor Stadium of Cotton University for your lunch.
জান বলি মাতিবি গোধূলি পুৱা নেলাগে নিবি সাৰ সোণৰে গহনা মোক কৰিবি মৰম বুঢ়া ধৰুৱা
Che, 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 hey. Che, hey, che, hey. Che.
আমি হলো আজরি লগে ভাগে মিলি জুলি খানাকে খাই দিও আমি কাম্বন খামরি আমি হলো আজরি লগে ভাগে মিলি জুলি খানাকে খাই দিও আমি ও হে বান্ধব কৃষ্ণ কাম্বুর ভগাই লইল কোনেনো ৰান্ধিব কোনেনো বাঢ়িব ও হে বান্ধব কৃষ্ণ মিউজিক ভলিউম বঢ়াই দেখ বেগা উঠিব ককাবি ভাঙিব নাচু নাচু লাগিব কৃষ্ণ 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 ও হে বান্ধব কৃষ্ণ 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 ও হে বান্ধব কৃষ্ণ মিউজিক ভলিউম বঢ়াই দেখ বেগা উঠিব ককাবি ভাঙিব নাচু নাচু লাগিব কৃষ্ণ কৃষ্ণ ও হে বান্ধৱ কৃষ্ণ 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 ও হে বান্ধৱ কৃষ্ণ 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 ও হে বান্ধৱ
Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to begin and resume our MCB debate competition. I request everyone to kindly take their seats. Well, after an engaging first half, which was full of intellectual deliberations and logical arguments from the student participants, now in the second half, post-lunch, we expect even more meaningful deliberations and debate. And on behalf of Cotton University, I once again welcome the esteemed speaker for today's debate competition, the respected jury members, student participants, and the lovely audience which is present here today at the auditorium, to the 41st Manik Chandra Barooah National Level Debate Competition hosted by Cotton University. Over to you, esteemed speaker, sir.
Thank you. I hope the participants are here and all of you must have had a sumptuous lunch. So we had the last speaker, Chaki G. Bolton. She spoke against the motion, so I'm going to call somebody who will speak for the motion now. Next speaker is Adarsh Dubey. Adarsh Dubey. Adarsh Dubey is from Ramjas College, Delhi University. Adarsh, please come on stage. You'll be speaking for the motion, Adarsh. Please wait for the bell to go. And then, I would request the timekeeper to press the... You ready? Yeah.
My voice is audible?
Yeah, you are audible now. Yeah. Yes.
3, 2, 1. Very good afternoon, everyone, respective judges, audience, and the participants. I am Adarsh Kumar Dubey from Ramjas College, Delhi University, and today I am going to speak against for the motion of the given topic. First of all, we have to understand the climate crisis, the word climate crisis. What do you mean? So, climate crisis refers to all the catastrophic circumstances which developed due to climatic change. It includes irregularity of rains, flood, drought, flash floods, rise of sea level, that is because of the rising temperature. So, now we have to understand the second word, that is the developing countries. What do we mean by that? Developing countries is basically the division of on the basis of economic development. In the present scenario, we can see that the world is divided into three parts, three blocks, developing, developed, and underdeveloped. Now we have to ask to ourselves that how climate crisis can impact geopolitical, economy, and sustainability, especially to developing and underdeveloped country. It can be either two ways. Either it will be through the impact in the form of catastrophic disaster, or it can be through the different foundation made or decided by developed or economically well-established countries, which include environmental treaties and agreement. Now, let's look into a scenario of two children impacted by any disease like dengue, one which is stronger, who is more who has more immunity, and one who is weaker. So basically, now I want to ask to everyone, so if this disease will attack, who will be able to cope up with this disease, and who will face the severe impact? Obviously, the second one will face severe implication, and he may die also. Similarly, if we see the scenario among the countries who will be able to deal with the catastrophic situations, obviously, developed country, because they have enough resources and technologies to deal with the situations and always ace the race of sustainability in the present world. For example, the countries like Japan and USA always faces the catastrophic situations like cyclone, earthquake, tsunami, but they able to cope up because of their because they have enough resources to deal with this situation. But if we look into the countries from African subcontinent, African continent, or West Asian and the Southeast East Asian countries, they suffer severely due to the climatic crisis. So now the second situation is basically the foundation or restriction caused by the different agreements launched by well-established economic countries. So basically there are many agreements and treaties such as Montreal Agreement and Kyoto Protocol. This is all the things that is done by already industrialized countries. Now we have to understand that if you are still agree to disagree with me, then I have a particular instance or an example that can counter all the things that is referring in the topic. Here, the example of Sri Lanka, which tried to adopt sustainable goals by transforming its agricultural pattern by such organic farming. So basically, we can see that this agricultural pattern or the shift in the agricultural pattern.
Thank you, Adarsh. Your time is over. If you're just completing there's no time for you to conclude. You can finish your sentence.
So basically, after this dependent on the developed countries, especially to the puppets institution like IMF and the World Bank. Thank you.
Thank you. Please wait if there are any questions. Otherwise, I'll ask. You have asked several questions, Anuj. I want new hands, or else I will move on to the next speaker. Okay. I'll call the next speaker. Thank you very much, Adarsh.
Thank you, sir.
Next speaker is George Paul, who will speak against the motion. George Paul is from Ramanuj Gupta Degree College, Silchar. George Paul, please come on stage. Proceed.
Just a second, can you please start it again? Speaker, sir, I wonder how the Treasury had the audacity in this House to raise a motion which goes against the very idea and interest of India itself. And from the arguments that have been advanced from the proposition in the House, I find myself standing vehemently against this entire oxymoronic motion. And this is where I also find Benjamin Disraeli very true to his statement that there are three kinds of lies. Lies, damned lies, and statistics. And this is what the Treasury bench has been repeatedly stating in the House, manipulating the numbers as per their narratives and narratives solely. Because, Speaker, sir, it is not climate crisis which is affecting these developing nations. It is rather the climate corruption which has been propagated by the lobby of developed nations, which is hindering the sustainability of the developing nations by looting and robbing their economies with all decisive means at hand. And let me prove this statement in the House. If we take a look at the guidelines that were given by the Assessment Report 5 of IPCC in the year 2014, if the global target is to reach 1.5 degrees Celsius, even with a 50% probability of its success, then the global carbon emissions should stand at 550 billion tons by the year 2100. And this is where the crux of the matter lies, Speaker, sir, because the Treasury might be flummoxed and flabbergasted to know that a synthesis report that had been published in that very year of 2014 by UNFCCC already mentioned that the world would emit 748 billion tons of carbon by the not-so-far year 2030, thereby making that 1.5 degrees Celsius target, even reaching 50% surety of it, a damn improbable and unrealistic target. And hence we understand how the United Nations and its lobby of globalists, which is posing itself as the Moses to save this humanity from an imaginary crisis that it has named, imaginary exodus I must say, that it has named climate crisis, is in itself heavily flawed and contradicts its own theories. Furthermore, I am astonished to find the Treasury bench that they lack basic understanding of this world. That these developing nations who have been always ecocentric in their approach, who have always kept human needs at the periphery and the nature at the center, and there are these developed nations who have been always anthropocentric in their approach. They have always kept the human needs at the center and the nature at the periphery. And these very developed nations who have been exploiting the nature in the name of development and civilization since 770 AD, and these countries who are reaching a global climate change today just because of their past deeds after fulfilling their nuclear arsenals, these very countries come out of nowhere and pose themselves as the Marvel Avengers of ecosystem to these developing nations who emit hardly in 2 digits, whereas they emit in triple digits. And hence this motion, which is a complete conspiracy by the colonial slaves who are sitting in the Treasury bench, must be discarded because it is a clear attempt to serve their colonial masters who are there in the developed nations to get a greater share of the carbon space that is available by bringing into existence concepts like carbon credit packages. And hence this motion should be declared null and void. And with this, I rest my case.
Thank you. Please wait. I think there is a hand going up. I would just like to point out, in the beginning of the debate we had mentioned not to use unparliamentary words. Just cautioning you not to use words like slaves, which would be considered as unparliamentary.
Yes. Afternoon, sir. My name is Harshit Bhatia and I'm from Delhi School of Journalism. Sir, you mentioned in your speech that these developed countries are now instructing developing countries to not use the resources which they did. So you are justifying that because at a certain period of time, developed countries exploited the climate. So now developing countries have the right to do that because at certain period of time, developed countries did. So what's the solution? We cannot play that blame game that because you did that, we will also do, don't instruct us. Please give me the solution.
Yes, sir, I get you.
Yes, you made your point. Thank you. Yes, Mr.
These developing nations have been, like I've always mentioned in my speech, that these developing nations have been ecocentric always in their approach. And as we are living in a global village, so the targets that we are setting should not be impartial in nature. For example, these developed nations are emitting carbon in triple digits, whereas these developing nations are emitting in double digits. And this, if we have a concept of global village in our mind, this must be equated somewhere or somewhere else, so that the equality is maintained in this global village. Thank you.
Right, the polluter pay principle. Yeah, so next speaker is Divya Jyoti. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Paul. Divya Jyoti Tripathi, who will speak for the motion, and Divya Jyoti is from... Divya Jyoti, please come on stage. Divya Jyoti Tripathi is from Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. He will speak for the motion. Wait for the bell to go and then start.
So with the cell count of 3 to 1, please give the bell. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
3, 2, 1. In the penultimate hour of a siren releasing for a cyclone, a semi-lunatic man was rushing towards a village when some folks were ruinating that particular place. But he went to some thatch huts like Spearhead to search his lost family. And suddenly, while he was rushing in the way, something enunciated into his memory lanes and also in his ears are the melodious lullabies and the calls of the love. But that uttered into a scintillating silhouette of a single hand pump that was present in his village, in which he made his family at last. But when blindly rushed towards the hand pump, he found himself in a knee-depth water, and that isolated hand pump inside the sea. This after winning the Oscar at 2021, when Mr. Nilamadha Panda was asked about this movie, Kaliratita, Mr. Panda, did you install this as a prop for your movie? He sadly realized this fact and said, sir, it's not a prop, it's a reality. Today we are living in a world in which we are donating our land to the whole seas without even considering. And for a larger part of time, the Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Island and the security areas regarding that has been engulfed by the sea. This is not only the case of a single village in Odisha. This could be the next Majuli, this could be the next Loktak, this could be the next Umananda, but we are not focusing on it, because I will iterate my stance by saying this is not an emergency, it is not a climate alarm, but a climate emergency, and the nation should try to address it. Honorable Chair, try to understand, we are living in a global village, and it's a duty of India to understand how much global relations and what type of carnage it can create for the whole world. We have to understand that this golden adore of the cartel has been squeezed out by this climate crisis. We have seen this climate crisis as a bygone for today. Each and every day we see a cyclone, we see a landslide, but we cannot accept the type of economic devastation coming with it. A lot of green capital is losing day by day, and people in proposition come and say that it totally has no impacts. So sir, who are the people who are getting migrated each and every day from one place to another, who are searching for new livelihoods? There has been a huge migration due to floods in India, and people are called climate refugees. When we discuss here, every minute I talk to you, 0.005% meter of land is sinking in Lakshadweep Islands, and that is affecting our Indian Air Force bases and naval bases there. We today supposed to be the alternate of China, are totally not controlling our Indian Ocean, but left the Indian Ocean in the whole beheld of the climate crisis, to understand how we can lose our possession. Not only this, when we talk about China and say of our land disputes of the Aksai Chain, we have to believe that during this whole division, there was a particular line called the John Ardog line, which was based on watershed division. And now the Karakoram ranges have strong glaciers due to western cyclonic disturbances, which are created due to imbalance of climate crisis in India, and they are extending those glaciers who can flood and inundate and change the diversification of the rivers in the total John Ardog line. And finally, we will be questioning that we got betrayed by our nature mother because we use ethical connotations. Do we even believe in the sanctity that we use this whole ethical connotations? Sir, a report by ILF states that due to the climate crisis, India is losing 8,000 job hours. So 8,000 job hours per day totally sums up to 8 crores job in more than 10 years. And for this whole tenure, we have to face a crisis having a demographic dividend due to these climate issues. We have seen Kedarnath, we have seen Himachal, we have seen Kasol, and each and every place due to the extra exploitation of that particular place and hampering the total balance. We are facing climate crisis, and India is collapsing day by day. Which India I want to invest is? India which is destroyed, India which does not have a Kashmir, India whose geography is totally diluted and totally devastated by this climate crisis. Lastly, talking about sustainability, once Mahatma Gandhi very strongly said, there is everything for the need of people, but there is nothing for the greed of the people. We have to understand that.
Thank you.
We have to sir, completing my line. Yeah. We have to understand that it is our share. And finally, speaking in India, when I say Jadevi to Sarva Bhuteshu Matlu Rupena Sanstita, Namastasya Namo Nama, and finally killing the environment is totally beyond my ethics. Thank you and have a nice day ahead.
Thank you. Please wait. Somebody may ask you a question. Otherwise, we can call the next speaker. Yeah. Okay. I don't see any hands going up. Thank you very much. So I'll call the next speaker. Thank you, Divyajyoti. The next speaker is Nayana Saikia. She'll speak against the motion. Nayana Saikia is from Sibsagar Commerce College, Sibsagar.
Being a member of a fifth largest economy like India, when I see the bill today talking about the implication of climate crisis on economy, sustainability, and geopolitics, I clearly stand in firm opposition to this bill. Greetings, honorable respected speaker sir and august gathering.
A phenomena like climate crisis cannot be contained to a few developing societies like India or the nations of Africa or the global south. For climate crisis, it affects the life of Mr. Joe Biden from the Kamakhya, from the White House to the Pandits of Kamakhya Pit in Guwahati as well. Further, when we talk about the economy, we must remember the hegemony of developed nations as well as their MNCs on the global south, as well as the international institution for the countries like Central African Republic to Somalia to Sudan, who suffer from more flood, drought, storms and other climate-related shocks than other countries. Even they have contributed least to the climate changes. In 77th session of General Assembly of United Nations, the developing societies of El Salvador, Bangladesh, Tunisia, Fiji, Republic of Korea, as well as our very own India, strongly criticized the stance of developed nation, where a developed nation like US and UK promises more to contribute to the environmental cause. For US contributed $42 billion for the environmental well-being in 2021, and yet 66 million tons of pollution was being emitted in the atmosphere in US in 2022. If a problem like climate crisis could be measured in terms of dollars, then we should start cutting more trees just to get the paper to print the money on. I remember that one of our neighbor, Bhutan, which is the only country in the world having negative carbon emissions, are rated to be a developing society, and yet when we are questioning the reverse caused by the climate crisis, the first finger should be pointed towards the developed nations. When we turn our attention to the implication of climate crisis on geopolitics, we should also remember the fact that the main advocate of the climate diplomacy raised in the hands of the Nordic nation, Australia, New Zealand as well as Canada. These are the developed nations which have enough strength in their hands to support the causes of finding the renewable and inexhaustible resources. But if we look towards the history, we could find that from the days of bipolarity, it was the hegemonies of capitalist system of US or the socialist model of USSR which actually dominating the economic system of these nations in their control and influences. Also, if we see USSR even went to more domination of the financial policy of the foreign policy of these nations too. Hence, it was these nations and their policy who actually created the system of developing societies. Honorable Speaker, sir, sustainability does not only mean that only the children of few developing countries would harness the benefits of resources of tomorrow, but it means that the generation of each country, developing and underdeveloped countries, would go on to harness the fruits of resources. For if an NHPC's project on the lower Subansiri stand against the sustainability of Assam, the same standing rocks of North and South Dakota should also stand against the sustainability of the children of tomorrow US. At the end, I must say that it is the high time to get away from the division of developed and developing and address the developed climate change as a one humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Nayana. You've just about finished on time. Any questions? Okay, I don't see any hands going up. Thank you. I'll call the next speaker, Mohammad Rezaul Islam, who will speak for the motion, and Mohammad Rezaul is from St. Anthony's College, Shillong. Mohammad Rezaul, please come on stage. Wait for the bell to go. Yeah, carry. Please proceed. The mic is not working. Please note, timekeeper, he is not being able to use. Please speak something. Yeah, speak now.
Hello?
Yeah, you're audible.
So on the count of 3, 2, 1. Namaskar, Assalamu alaikum, Adab, hello and good afternoon to one and all present here. Myself, Mohammad Rezaul Islam, today stand here in support of the motion that climate crisis affects developing societies like far-reaching implications on geopolitics, economic sustainability, and in global race. Respected speaker, now if we look in the topic, we find some critical words that consist of major terms that can be analyzed in my future references in the speech. Climate change is not a distant threat. It is something that is happening, and it is something that is going on. Now, as I stand here today, I would like to shed upon light to the vulnerable societies that are a victim of this climate change. When I say climate change, I refer to the food security, where approximately 80% of the world are chronically under the developing countries. When I say about the climate change, I refer to the rate of disruptions of climate in agriculture, as said by the Food Agriculture Organization. When I say about for climate change, I refer to the water scarcity, where 1 out of the 3 people lack in access of clean water, as far as the WHO reports. The way in the increasing alarming manner the climate is changing, the impacts are not just limited in the countries but economy, but also in the geopolitical connection. The International Displacement Monitoring Center states 22.5 million people are displaced due to the climate-related calamities. Let me recall you some examples in the history. For number 1, the drought and the agriculture collapse of Syria in 2006 and 2011 that gave a remarkable calamity in the entire history. Number 2, East African crisis of the Horn African drought, leading to forced migrations and regional instability. Number 3, the Sahel region in Mali and Burkina, frequent prolonged droughts that lead to desertifications of different and loss of livelihood. As now I speak about in terms of India, I would like to mention about some of the recent examples. For example, the Kedarnath that happened in 2000, the Kedarnath flood that happened in 2013, the Orissa flood that happened in 1999, also in the recent time, the Assam flood that is happening, and it is evident that how the hot rose and they are submerged underwater. Who is to be blamed now? Is it the people, or just like Kanjilal Mehta in OMG mentioned, that is it the act of God? It is the climate change that is being done. It is making the impact that we are seeing, and it is evident how we are suffering. For example, I would like to mention about some of the other facts that one important key element that social equity is a major factor in developing countries, where the PPP, purchasing power parity, I repeat, purchasing power parity and the income level is very less compared to the developed countries. These factors equally indulge in the developing countries to go down in a subsequent rate in majorly and giving an impact in the climate crisis. Lastly, I would like to mention that climate crisis in India is evident through the recent time. The highest rising temperature and the heat wave that was evident in this year, 2023, it was more than the highest temperature recorded in Rajasthan, that was 123.1 Fahrenheit. It shows that climate change is real. At the end, with the words of Barack Obama, I would like to say that climate change is no longer a far-off problem. It's happening here, and it's happening now. And do remember, we don't have any option B to survive or option B planet to live there. Thank you.
Thank you, Rizal. Your time's up. Okay. I'm calling the next speaker, Nishant Sharma, who will speak against the motion. And Nishant is from Atmaram Sanatan Dharma College, ARST, University of Delhi. Nishant, please come on stage.
Okay, so start on the reverse count of 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Panel, we need to understand that the debate on the against stance of the motion is not a good debate, because we need to explain how climate crisis do not affect developing countries when we talk about geopolitics, economy, and sustainability. So, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Speaker sir, esteemed guests. Today, I, Nishant, will be speaking against the motion, the climate crisis affects developing societies like India, with far-reaching implication on geopolitics, economy, sustainability in the global race today. Starting with geopolitics, we need to understand how countries interact on global stage today. Countries align themselves on different issues, policies, conflicts, according to their personal interests and diplomacy. Panel, we need to understand that this statement that climate crisis has far-reaching impacts on geopolitics of a developing country is a very superficial remark. How? I will explain. We have example of China. China being a country which is the highest emitter of greenhouse gases, but still holds a very big global clot and has a very big impact on the global politics. We have India. India being the third in the list of polluters and still has a very good diplomacy, have good bilateral relation with the countries in West, America, Europe, Russia. Panel, my proposition is trying to establish that the global north or the developed countries are outweighing the global south when it comes to the policy formation on climate crisis. But that is not the case. Whether we see COP26, COP27 meetings, the main emphasis in these meetings is that the whole lot of fight against climate crisis must be led by the developed countries, because we know that the major chunk of net total emission in the last 3 centuries are done by the developed countries. They are talking about that the developed countries should invest in green energy. They must transfer the technology for green energy to the developed countries. Whole of this shows that the global south or the developed countries have a say. They have equal voice in the global chambers of discussion. So by this, we can conclude that the developing countries are not weak on the global level. They are negotiating for their development, for their betterment, and the climate crisis is not affecting their geopolitical interest. Now moving on the next, the part of economics, the economy. Panel, we can see that there is a word called global race. What is that race? That race is against poverty. That race is about providing jobs, providing employment, and that can only be done by the process of industrialization. When we say that climate crisis has far-reaching implication on economy, it means in the long run, the country will remain unindustrialized or will always be in the developing state. But this is not true. Climate crisis can create challenges which are time-bound, but in the long run, the developing countries will create better green and sustainable systems. The best example for that are the countries which are developed now. Back in the history, they were also in their developing phase, and at that time they were suffering the climate challenges, but right now they have a better, robust, climate-friendly system. This shows that how the climate crisis will not have far-reaching implication on the economies. The developing countries will create system in that era. They will develop those systems which will not affect their economy. Now, moving on the last part of sustainability, we first need to understand the challenge of sustainability for developing countries is the lack of resources, primarily the energy resources. As I said, world is coming together to combat the climate crisis. The whole new concept of climate finance has emerged, in which the developed countries are financing the green energy or the technology transfer to the developing countries. So in the long run, this will help developing countries to solve their problem of sustainability. They will have green energy resources. They will have all kind of infrastructure which the developed countries have made.
Thank you. Your time is over. Okay. Yeah, you can complete, if you're in the middle of a sentence, you can complete the sentence.
Yes, so I was completing my sentence that
yes, please, Nishant.
Climate crisis also do not affect the developing countries on the domain of sustainability, because all the developed countries will invest to develop the green technology and all the systems which are sustainable for that.
Thank you. I can see one hand go up. Yeah, please be brief and please be quick. I still have many participants.
So, sir, you mentioned about that the whole world is trying to transfer technology and funding for the climate conservation of climate. But sir, what about the Paris Agreement, in which $100 billion were made as an annual commitment and till 2020, but they are not yet completed till date? What about those?
So,
questions should be brief, answers should be even.
Okay, I will answer a question. When we see the world by the vision of a developing countries, earlier to climate crisis, we don't have any issue for which we can come closer to the developed countries. But climate crisis being an issue whose effect is not localized but globalized. So, not now, but in near future, developed countries will fund us, because it will affect them also. If we do not have sustainable energy sources, renewable energy sources, then it will not only affect us, that it will affect whole of the globe. So the globe or the whole lot of global community will come together and help the developing countries to have sustainable systems.
Thank you so much, Nishant. I'll call the next speaker now. Deboshri Roy Chaudhary. Deboshri Roy Chaudhary from University of Science and Technology, Meghalaya. She will speak for the motion. Deboshri, please come on stage. Please wait for the bell to go. Proceed.
If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more and become more, you are a leader. A very good afternoon to honorable speakers, sir, honorable panel of judges and the respected house. Today, I stand here firmly supporting the motion that climate crisis affects developing societies like India, having far-reaching implications on its economies, geopolitics and sustainability in the global race today. Honorable speakers, sir, when John Adams gave this particular quote, it reminds me, it compels me to question our respected opposition bench member that when they say that the climate crisis have no far-reaching implications on developing societies like India, honorable speaker, sir, that when India stands at the 8th position according to the Global Climate Change Performance Index and stands at the 8th position, honorable speaker, sir, then why India faces the extreme heat wave, drought, extreme flood, and then has made a record-breaking hit in this September. Honorable speaker, sir, when one of our respected opposition bench members say that we have partial knowledge about the climate crisis affecting developing societies like India, which compels me to question our respected opposition bench member that what about the state of Maharashtra, which was once called the land of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, is now called the suicide capital of India, and in the last year 2022, this capital is more than 5,000 farmers suiciding according to the report of NCRB. Honorable speaker, sir, which reminds me of a very important quote given by Karl Marx. He said that history repeats itself first as tragedy and then second as farce. Honorable speaker, sir, a time existed in India where the ancient Indus Valley civilization existed, where Indian citizens feel proud of its ancient past. Honorable speaker, sir, that ancient valley civilization was thriving 4,000 years ago because of climatic conditions, and that's why they migrated to southern and eastern parts of India, according to the report of IIT Kharagpur. Honorable speaker, sir, when India today itself stands at one of the topmost countries where 5 out of 20 migrants are born in India, which compels me to question our respected opposition bench member that when they say that climate change have no far-reaching implications on geopolitics, and what about the climate refugees, and what about the report of the Internal Displacement and Monitoring Center that says that India has 14 million and climate refugees sustaining in India, and a report shows that when natural disasters take place, the vulnerable sections of women and children are more prone to trafficking, sexual abuse. Honorable speaker, sir, the question here is not what is best to do, but who shall decide what is best. Honorable speaker, sir, when our respected opposition bench members say that the Indian economy stands at the highest position, then let me say here, when India plans to take local to global, what about when India is the second largest production of rice, honorable speaker, sir, that second largest production of rice, according to the report of United States, in the coming year of 2050, it will decline to 50%. Honorable speaker. Honorable speaker, sir, talking about sustainability, when our respected opposition bench members say is that sustainability has no far-reaching, climate crisis no far-reaching or sustainability, then what about the women who travels 5 kilometers in Rajasthan and to carry new water? Honorable speaker, sir, with this I would like to conclude what Barack Obama said, that our plan should not be to create another plan. Our plan should be to stay in this planet, and because there is no other plan B, there is no other planet B. Thank you, respected speaker, sir. Thank you, respected house.
Thank you. Please stay on. Please stay on. I can see one hand going up. Yeah, please be brief. Please be brief.
Respected ma'am, you have mentioned about climate refugees, but United Nations and especially United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees have never officially recognized climate refugees. Then ma'am, what is your take on that?
Thank you, respected ma'am. I think you have not listened to what I said. I did not say about United Nations. I mentioned about the data of Internal Displacement Monitoring Center, which claims that there are 14 million refugees in India. So I have said about my own data. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. I will call the next speaker now. Next speaker is Dhiman Chakravarti, who will speak against the motion. Dhiman Chakravarti is from the Assam Royal Global University, Guwahati. Please wait. Yeah, please wait. Let him prepare.
Am I audible, Speaker Sir?
Yes, you are.
Shall I proceed?
Yes, I will just wait for the bell to go.
Good afternoon to the Honorable Speaker Sir and all the members of this House. In this era of geopolitics where every country is trying to increase their dominance in the world power, climate crisis is providing developing societies like India with a forum to use diplomatic leverage to pursue its own interests. Be it the increased international assistance, be it the climate diplomacy, or be it the renewable energy transition, climate crisis has in turn benefited developing societies in a number of ways. Therefore, it becomes my moral as well as social obligation to stand firmly in this House against today's motion, which is climate crisis affects developing societies like India with far-reaching implication on their geopolitics, economies, and sustainability in the global race today. Speaker Sir, climate crisis had led to a platform for the developing societies like India, which provide them with climate diplomacy, which in turn attracts foreign direct investment for green financing and sustainable development. Speaker Sir, according to an article published on the Economic Times on 20th of December 2023, India has received over $13 billion through foreign direct investment for renewable energy transition. Speaker Sir, the learned members of the Treasury are blinded by the misconception that climate crisis leads to unemployment. But to clear the misconception, I would like to mention that climate crisis thereby increases employment opportunities by creating green jobs, specifically in developing societies like India. Speaker Sir, it is worth mentioning that according to the report of the International Labour Organization published in 2022, India has created 8,63,000 green jobs in the year 2020-21. Also, according to the report of the Skill Council for Green Jobs, India has the potential to create 35 million jobs by the year 2047. Speaker Sir, climate crisis has also led to the creation of green bonds, which in turn has aided to the economy and sustainability of developing societies like India. Also, according to a report published on Economic Times on 6th of July 2023, the Indian government has raised $80 billion of green bonds and another $80 billion of sovereign green bonds. Speaker Sir, the learned members of the Treasury are clouded with the delusion that climate crisis leads to decline in agricultural production. But to clear the delusion, I would like to mention a declaration of the Indian budget which states that the total food grain production was 74.7 million tons in the year 1959-1960. But on the contrary, according to the Press Information Bureau report 2023, the total food grain production of India as of now has increased to 330.5 million tons. Speaker Sir, where the learned members of the Treasury are claiming climate crisis to be one of the major reasons affecting agricultural growth in India, the factual data indicates this claim to be nothing but completely paradoxical. Speaker Sir, climate crisis has not affected but rather benefited developing societies from the shift from the primitive agricultural techniques to sustainable agriculture, from the enhancement of ecotourism to the access to international climate finance mechanism. Climate crisis has not only aided to the economy of developing societies, but has also helped them to improve their position and hold in the world geopolitics and attainment of sustainability in the global race today. And Speaker Sir, after stating all this point, if the learned members of the Treasury are still adamant with their delusion, it somewhat reminds me of a very famous statement of an Irish orator and playwright who rightly said, and I quote, "Be aware of false knowledge. It is more dangerous than ignorance," unquote. With this I conclude. Thank you and have a nice day.
Please wait. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, I don't see any hands going up. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I'll call the next speaker, Shivank Sinha, who will speak for the motion, and Shivank is from Ramanuj Gupta Degree College, Silchar. Shivank, please come on stage. Wait for the bell to go, and then you can start.
3, 2, 1, go. We the people of India, having solemnly resolved to serve the national, political, economic and societal interest of our motherland till the very last breath. Good afternoon everyone present here. I am Shivank Sinha, and today I stand before the House to advocate for the motion on the topic climate crisis affects developing societies like India with far-reaching implications on the geopolitics, economies, and sustainability in the global race today. Being a student of economics, let me tell you, I am worried. Our agricultural sector, the backbone of our economy, needs to change. We can't just rely on self-sufficiency anymore. We need to focus on crop specialization and trade internationally in order to ensure food security in the face of a climate crisis. Think about our roads. They are like the veins of our country. But during monsoons, the blood in the veins gets clogged up due to preventable landslides, costing us a whopping 1% of our GDP. That much money could be used in building a more stronger and resilient nation. Now let's talk about our environmental commitments. India has pledged to go carbon neutral by 2070 and generate 500 gigawatts of non-fossil fuel energy by 2030. We're leading the way on the global stage. But here's the thing. For our nation, it's not just about saving the planet. It's about sustained economic growth in order to alleviate poverty and keep up with our strategic competitors, mainly China. Now, those heat waves, they are not just hot weather. Rather, they're increasing the risk of heart strokes and other diseases. Heat waves in India cause an estimated 6,500 deaths annually and have reduced the productivity of workforce by up to 40%, which accounts to a net economic loss of around $3.8 billion per year. Now, I see Africa, which is responsible for less than 10% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, but has been dealing with a harsh reality. It is the continent least ready to face the brutal effects of climate change, which are heat waves, floods, tropical cyclones, and prolonged droughts, which have wrecked more communities than we can even think of. Adding fuel to the fire is desertification, which has caused political unrest in regions like the Sahel. So, Africa has got double the trouble than any other continent, which has turned a geopolitical stand into a really tough gig. Now let me share a paradox. On one hand, we are told to boycott Chinese goods, and on the other hand, use solar power as an alternative to fossil fuels. Yet, China holds more than 80% of the market share for manufacturing of solar panels. It can leave you a bit lost, right? Lastly, let's not forget the historical context. The developed world industrialized at our own expense, and now we are caught in a dilemma. How much should we invest in our own development, and how much to adapting to a changing climate? The developed world have thrived on fossil fuels, and while switching to renewable energy sounds great in theory, it's not always a smooth ride in practice. So here's what I'm asking for: unity. We, the people of the developing and the underdeveloped world, should stand together. We must demand that the developed world pay us back in the form of financial and technological transfers for exploitation of our resources in the past. It's time they help us meet international climate change standards. In conclusion, let our love for our country fuel our determination to tackle climate change. Our future, our nation's future depends on it. With this, I rest my case. Jai Hind. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Shivank. Okay, so I'll call the next speaker. I can't see any. Yes, I can't see any hands going up. The next speaker is Sanjana Rani. She will speak against the motion. She's from St. Edmund's College, Shillong. Sanjana Rani, please come on stage. Sanjana, wait for the bell to go. Are you prepared? No, you're not.
Just a minute, sir. I'm audible, right? Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed Mr. Speaker, sir, judges and my fellow debaters today, I stand here to oppose the motion. Climate crisis affects developing societies like India with far-reaching implications on their geopolitics, economics, and sustainability in the global race today. I think the proposition should for once stop being so pessimist and think about it the other way. While the prevailing narrative paints a very grim picture of gloom and doom, I'm here to highlight a silver lining. They say that every cloud has a silver lining, and in this case of climate crisis, the silver lining is a very shiny one. Now, before I am called a climate crisis denier, it is important for us to understand that climate crisis is not the sole reason for a developing country's challenges. And blaming it is like blaming all the problems on the weather forecast for not telling us it is going to rain. Firstly, Mr. Speaker, sir, with your permission, I would like to address my arguments against the far-reaching implications on geopolitics. I believe that climate crisis has strengthened India's position on the world stage because we are not just bystanders, but active participants in the world stage right now. We are getting a chance to be a part of negotiations and flex our diplomatic muscles in the world stage level, and we are part of various conferences and agreements, and our opinion plays a significant role. So we clearly see that we are playing an important role in the geopolitics. Moving on, Speaker Sir, now I'd like to talk about the climate crisis and economy. What I will be driving at here is that climate crisis doesn't necessarily have to spell economic doom. It can even be a catalyst for economic growth and innovation. Green tech resolutions and startups are emerging, because of which employments are being created. And if there is employment, there is a high chance of increase in economy. Let me take another example. Our capital city, Delhi. It has now been given a very fancy award, the award of being the most polluted city in the country, in the world, in fact. And do you think it is not making money? It is still making money, right? So even after being the most polluted, it is still making money, and it is one of the most major GDP contributors of the country. You can take examples of any high-tech city, Bangalore, Hyderabad, or Mumbai, for example. They are facing climate crisis, but at the same time, they are providing to India's economy. And let me tell you, we literally have entrepreneurs who could even sell ice to polar bears in India. So if there are green techs coming up, we could sell green techs and green items, recyclable items, and that will even help in sustainability. And we human beings, we look for profit in every single thing we do, right? So when we are setting up these green techs, we can literally make money while saving the planet. And making money while saving the planet is what? Saving the economy, right? So moving on, lastly, I'd like to explore the relationship of sustainability and climate crisis. It is like a chicken and an egg scenario. Who came first? Or in this case, did sustainability emerge because of climate crisis or vice versa? I believe sustainability emerged because of climate crisis, and because of that, we cannot say that sustainability is being affected by climate crisis, because it is a source to cure climate crisis. So how can we say that sustainability is being affected by it? Lastly, in conclusion, I'll just say that climate crisis will not necessarily affect a developing country, because a developing country will grow no matter what. There was COVID-19 pandemic, yet we adapted to it and resumed to grow our economy. We might have fallen back, but we still developed. We are still developing, in fact. So even with climate crisis, it is the same thing. We shall adapt and we shall continue developing, and there is no argument about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I don't see hands going up, so I will call the next speaker. Ruma Begum, who will speak for the motion. Ruma is from Indraprasth College for Women, Delhi University. Is Ruma there? I can't see her. Okay, yeah, she's there.
Hello. Honorable Speaker, sir, in order to conceive the urgent necessity of the bill and understand it better, today's bill must be divided into 4 parts. For the first part, Honorable Speaker, sir, there are 4 primary ways in which climate crisis can affect developing societies like India. Number 1, crisis in agriculture and animal husbandry. Climate crisis will affect the climate, which in turn will affect the rate of precipitation, that in turn will affect the soil, ultimately destroying the crop cycle. Desertification is a living example of how climate crisis can destroy the agriculture. Number 2, health. Due to climate crisis, temperature of various regions have been distorted. Extreme events such as long summers and short winters have become common nowadays. It will consequently affect the health of people. Number 3, lack in infrastructure. As we know that a developing nation like India cannot afford to reduce the consumption of natural resources immediately like developed nation, because renewable sources of energy like solar energy and hydropower require expensive and sophisticated infrastructure. Number 4, culture. Yes, it might sound awkward, but climate crisis will also affect the cultural diversity of societies like India. Due to failure in agriculture, farming hereditary societies will be forced to move to cities in search of livelihood. Now, Honorable Speaker, sir, I would like to move to the second part of the bill, which talks about how geopolitics is manipulated by climate crisis. Number 1, distortion of export and import. As we know that climate crisis can affect the production of food crops, it will adversely affect the export and import of food items to and from foreign nations, thus creating a fluctuation between supply and demand between the nation. Number 2, large-scale migration. Due to flooding and desertification in vast tracts of land, people will be forced to move from one nation to another, especially to developed nations, thus constraining international relations. In fact, according to World Bank, there will be around 200 million refugees around 2050 due to climate crisis. Now, Honorable Speaker, sir, I would like to move to the third part of the bill, which talks about the economic implications. Number 1, increased wealth inequality. According to Wealth Inequality Report 2021, the top 1% of Indians hold 22% of India's national income, while the bottom 50% hold only 13% of the national income. Climate crisis will further aggravate it and tilt it away from the poor. Number 2, increase government expenditure. As we know that climate crisis will gradually increase the number of dependents on food subsidies, it will thus make the government make more expenditure on food subsidies rather than on capital investment. Now, Honorable Speaker, sir, I would like to move to the fourth and last part of the bill, which talks about implications on sustainability. The greatest challenge for a nation like India would be to maintain a balance between the present population and the future possible requirements. At a time when India is targeting $5 trillion economy, it would be a very hard choice for India to make more expense on the renewable sources of energy. Honorable Speaker, sir, I would like to say to my opposition bench that there is a Cree Indian proverb which says that only when the last tree is cut, only when the last fish is caught, and only when the last river is poisoned, then they will know that money cannot be eaten. With this, I would firmly like to request you to pass this bill not just in favor of the Treasury bench, but also in favor of the nation as a whole. With this, I would like to conclude my speech. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, sir. Thank you, respected House.
Thank you very much. I will call the next speaker now, Anubhav Parasar. Anubhav Parasar will speak against the motion, and he is from JB College, Jorhat, Jagannath Barooah College, Jorhat.
Hello.
Wait for the bell to go.
Good evening. Honorable Speaker, sir, and respected members of the House, according to the reports published by NASA Earth Observatory, the global temperature of the world has increased by more than 1 degree Celsius starting from the 1880s and have mass escalated after 1975. Honorable Speaker, sir, the global sea level have increased by more than 21 centimeters within the past few decades. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres on 27th July 2023 stated that era of global warming has ended and the era of global boiling has started. Honorable Speaker, sir, we have always used the word global in order to describe the different dimensions of climate crisis, and this is because we understand that climate crisis does not consider any geographical, political or economic boundaries, whether it is a developing nation like India or a developed superpower like US. Both sides of the spectrum needs to face the consequences inevitably. And since I understand this very nature of climate crisis, I wholeheartedly oppose the proposed bill in which the members of the Treasury bench have tried to narrow down the impact perspective of climate crisis only just to developing nations. Honorable Speaker, sir, the United Nations introduced the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which were to be met by 2030. But since the statement of Assistant Secretary General of UNDP have mentioned that only 12% of those goals have been on track up till now, and it is highly probable that none of those goals will be met by the end of 2030. In the words of Dr. Klaus Toffler, sustainability is the peace policy of the future, and it seems that we have already bargained with the future of our present as well as the future generations. Honorable Speaker, sir, with the dawn of the 21st century, the world have witnessed more than 20 world fires, starting from the Russian fire of 2003 till the Maui global fire of August 2023, costing to billions and billions of dollars of damage. Honorable Speaker, sir, the famous journal Guardian used the term Black Summer in order to describe the devastating conditions of the bushfires of Australia from 2019 to 2020. Honorable Speaker, sir, as far as the geopolitical scenario is concerned, India, being a developing nation, have always been on the forefront and been the torchbearer of curbing climate crisis. Padma Shri awardee, the Forest Man of India, Jadab Payeng, have planted more than 40 million trees in 1,360 acres of land and had established himself as a testimony of what pure intent can change. Honorable Speaker, sir, the love for nature have always existed in the cultural heritage of our nation, and this has been portrayed through the theme of the 18th G20 meet, that is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one earth, one family, one future. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, sir. Thank you, respected House.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, I don't see hands going up. I'll call the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
The next speaker is Shreyanshi Veda Shruti. Shreyanshi Veda Shruti is from St. Edmund's College, Shillong, and she will speak for the motion. Just wait. Is your mic working, Shreyanshi?
Hello.
Yes. Okay.
So
Your
am I
mic
audible?
is working. Yeah. Just wait for the bell to go, and then.
1, 2, 3. With the help of the opposition's superb debating skills, the audience has finally managed to distract themselves from the debate. Good afternoon, respected jury members, our speaker, my worthy proponents, opponents, and everyone seated over here. The motion of the House is climate crisis affects developing societies like India with their far-reaching implications on geopolitics, economies, and sustainability in the global race today. I support the motion because I deeply, deeply care for my motherland, and anything that will have implications on it, I'll stand against it till my very last breath. Unlike the opposition, who's just here for the sake of debating and seems to be very blind on it. Dear opposition, how does it feel to be seated on the very wrong side in a debate like this? But dear opponents, no worries. I'm sure that with my logical deductions, you'll end up singing the same chorus as of me. Climate change is one of the biggest threats humanity is facing today. Now let me get back to why do I support the motion, but to change and spice up the course of the game, I'll highlight the points in a reverse order. Starting with sustainability. India's Sustainable Development Goals lay out a uniquely ambitious and comprehensive agenda for global development by 2030. And the least that I expect from the opposition is that they should know that India has been acing the game with the discovery of lithium ores in Jammu and Kashmir in the month of February. And why do I say that it has aced its game? Because lithium is a clean and green fuel, and with the help of that, we can make sustainable, eco-friendly cars. Now, how is climate change coming into the whole scenario? High ambient temperatures can affect the ore and decrease its performance and power capabilities, turning a whole ore into a barren land. Put a hand on your heart. Isn't that sad? Isn't that terrifying? I hope the opposition doesn't have the memory of a goldfish, as they said that They want foreign exchange or foreign investment in India, but they seem to forget that Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji on the COP26 promised that India will cut its emission to net zero by 2070. And with this sort of a scenario, where the climate change is growing per day at a risking arena or a risking graph, how does India stand true on its expectations? How does the PM carry out with his responsibilities? Number second would be economy. I am no economic expert, but all I know is India is an agrarian economy, which means it is substantially based on agriculture for its economy. But then with the low rainfall levels in India, the GDP is dipping. Forget climate change, forget everything. Can we battle hunger at this stage? Let me get back to geopolitics. The Mars orbital mission was an interplanetary mission to Mars, which was supposed to be launched on October 28, 2013. But due to untimely weather conditions which couldn't be harbored, it couldn't be launched on the very same date. Now let's get back to how India is acing the game in geopolitics. But the thing is, if Mars orbital mission couldn't have been launched, how would we have been successful in geopolitical space wars? What would our position be? According to media reports, there's also, with increasing climate change, China plans to divert the waters of Brahmaputra. I have a long list of events, but due to paucity of time, I have to refrain myself, but I'll stick to the motion till the end of my breath. Thank you.
Thank you, Shreyashi. Thank you. Okay, I don't see any hands going up, so I'll call the next speaker. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Roktim Ranjan Neog. Roktim Ranjan Neog will speak against the motion, and he is from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Guwahati.
Honorable Speaker Person and the August House. Today we live in a very capitalistic world driven by national interest, control over natural resources, and power projection capabilities of nations, which greatly affects the geopolitics and economies and sustainability aspects of every nation on this earth. And while the issue of climate crisis may just be a tip in the iceberg, hence, Honorable Speaker Person, today I take my stand to vehemently oppose the given theme and would like to state my opinions on the same. Honorable Speaker Person, the Hungarian author George Friedman once said, and I quote, "Geopolitics is about understanding the interests and motives behind the country's actions." And of course, geopolitics is often driven by the country's self-interests. Let's talk about China's People's Liberation Army Navy's continuous increasing activities in the Indian Ocean region and the Indian Navy's efforts to counter it. China's Belt and Road Initiative, or the Chinese government's new release of the maps, which includes the Aksai Chin, Arunachal Pradesh, and the South China Sea within its own territory. Or let's talk about India, who has a deepening relationship with the United States of America and the Quad members of Australia, Japan, and the US to counter the rising Chinese activities in the Asia-Pacific region. Or let's talk about India's bid to include the African Union in the G20 to project itself as the leader of the developing and the underdeveloped world. Honorable Speaker Person, if we look at these trends, it is very clear that these actions by these countries are reflective of their power projection desires, their national interests, and control over natural resources, which has very limited scope about climate interference. Honorable Speaker Person, if we talk about the economy, one phrase which comes to my mind, and I quote, which is, नेता का बेटा पढ़े विदेश में और गरीब का बेटा धर्म का रक्षा करे. Honorable Speaker Person, recently we have been seeing that the rising unemployment has led to more and more youths engaging in antisocial activities and communal rioting. In fact, the Institution for Economics and Peace, or the IEP, states that communal violence has cost the Indian economy $1,190.51 billion in 2017, which is around 9% of India's GDP, or 40,000 rupees per person. As communal and social violence grows, the economy loses its attractiveness to global investors. In fact, according to the India Spend website, exports of India's leather industry has declined by more than 3% in the 2016 to 2017 period and around 1.3% in the 2017 to 2018 period, compared to 18% growth in the 2013 to 2014 period. And India Spend has attributed this decline specifically to increase in the activities of cow vigilantism, or which we call Gau Rakshak groups. Honorable Speaker Person, according to the Center for Monitoring the Indian Economy, the informal sector of the country, which contains around 80% workforce of the Indian economy, has suffered heavily due to unplanned government strategies like demonetization, rollout of the goods and service taxes, and the COVID-19 lockdown. In fact, in the cash for jobs or unorganized sector, demonetization has led to the loss of around 95 lakh jobs. In the COVID-19 pandemic, rural household incomes were completely wiped out, and to make matters worse, the government cut off the funding to MG Enrega scheme, which actually offers job to the rural workforce. Then, according to the Hindu's Business Line article, till June 2023, around 10,777 employees were laid off from their jobs by prominent companies like Infosys. Honorable Speaker Person, in the concluding statement, if we look that, we can conclude that all this evidence increasingly points to the fact that other factors are at larger play than just climate crisis alone. And hence, lastly, I would like to end my speech by quoting a quote of Albert Einstein, which is, and I quote, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." Hence, Honorable Speaker Person, I would like to urge my Treasury bench members to join hands with us and focus on all the aspects which actually affect
please
the
conclude the
geopolitics
sentence.
and economies of developing societies like India, rather than just solely focusing on climate crisis. Thank you, Honorable Speaker Person. Thank you, House.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see anyone. I'll call the next speaker, but before, you can go, Rakdim. Thank you very much. Your
Thank
time
you,
is
sir.
complete. I want to make a small point. You know, there are speakers for the motion and against the motion, but I would request every speaker, when they are opposing the motion, I would request them to state the reasons why they are opposing, and not because we can debate many topics under the sun, but I would request them to restrict to the topic or the motion of the House and why they present themselves to oppose the motion as stated in this debate. The next speaker is Avek Teotia. Avek Teotia will speak for the motion. Avek Teotia. Avek Teotia is from Motilal Nehru College, University of Delhi. Avek.
Hello. We start my speech by count 3, 2, 1. Greetings, jury. My name is Avek, and I stand here to speak in favor of the motion. Jury, we need to understand that the topic we are discussing here, we have assembled here to address a global crisis of unprecedented magnitude. One that transcends borders and races and fundamentally reshapes our very understanding of the world, the infamous climate crisis. The implications and the ramifications of the climate crisis are profound, and it is the developing nations that are at the receiving end, aka the global south. Primarily, they are situated in the tropical regions, and that is exactly why they are vulnerable to scorching heat waves, devastating droughts, floods, erratic weather patterns, urban heat islands, cyclones, and destruction of the coral reefs. We can say that the global south is suffering from everything, everywhere, all at once. Let us delve into the profound impact of the climate change into the economies of the global south. We all know the fact that the developing nations primarily depend upon the agriculture. And since they depend upon the agriculture, the counter-currents of the Eastern Pacific, commonly known as the El Nino, affects the agriculture output of those nations, infuses the inflation into the economy that pressurizes those nations to restrict or ban the export of the food grains that perceive and supply as a bad image and impacts the geopolitics of those developing nations, and also creates a hunger crisis in the countries like Africa who depend upon the countries like India and Indonesia for the food grains. Speakers, we also need to understand the loss of productive hours because of the heat waves, because almost prominently all the developing countries and the global south lies in the tropical region. And this phenomena intensifies after the issue of the urban heat islands. Speakers, we also need to understand, rather than blaming the global south for the climate crisis, we need to understand that the global south and international organizations need to understand that the basic fact that the developing nations are not mere and means to an end in the fight against climate change, but they are end in themselves. Also, the climate-induced migration is another concern. Nation like Bangladesh will be submerged into the ocean by the end of this century, poses a threat of more than 150 million people at the receiving end of the developing countries. And also, the climate mitigation repartitions and the namesake of the climate mitigation repartition of the global north comes with the terms and condition. And we are seeing the live example here where the Niger versus the ECOWAS, where the France as a European country have actually invested in the Africa in the name of climate change or in the name of climate loan and debt and the aid they have given, and that is exactly why the ECOWAS is acting as a vessel state for the France to secure the interests of the France. And as far as geopolitics is concerned, speakers of need to understand that Global South has always advocated for the multipolar world. And as far as multipolar world is concerned, despite the multipolar forums and international organizations like G20, BRICS, and the SCO, the obsession of the West to condemn the Russia-Ukraine war in the geopolitical forums and the multipolar forums, and the obsession of the Russia and China to counter the West has actually diluted the very essence of the multipolar world, and has again the leverage that developing nations has been diluted. And Speaker Sir, I refuse to delve into the details of the international agreements and the policies of the local government because the practical value they has been falls short. What's the point of actually quoting those policies of the local government if they have not yielded anything in the mitigation of the climate change? Speaker Sir, in the end, I'll only say I urge the Global South to understand the very fact that if they can be a cause to something, there must be a solution too. And as far as petty politics is concerned, you may go for it. But even for petty politics, one must exist, and the climate change threatens our own existence and the survival. And I'll conclude my remarks by saying, smell the coffee and wake up, because climate change is at your door to haunt you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Abeg. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll call the next speaker, Gaurav Kashyap. Gaurav Kashyap will speak against the motion. Gaurav Kashyap is from JB College, Guwahati. JB Law College. JB Law College, I correct that again. Gaurav Kashyap will speak against the motion, JB Law College, Guwahati. Carry on.
If you misdiagnose anything, whether it's a serious disease or an international geopolitical threat, you will never be able to solve it. Honorable Speaker, sir, and the members of this House, I totally oppose this proposed bill which says climate crisis affects developing societies like India with far-reaching implications on their geopolitics, economics, and sustainability in the global race today. Honorable Speaker, sir, according to a report by S&P Global, the top geopolitical risks of 2023 includes Russia-NATO tensions, cyber attacks, US-China relations, deglobalization, COVID-19 pandemic, energy security, sovereign debt crisis, and climate crisis. But my fellow Treasury Bench members, putting a blind eye on climate crisis, are ignoring all other potential risks which has much larger far-reaching implications on the geopolitics, economies, and sustainability on the developed nations of the West, oil and natural resource capitals of the Middle East, and the developing nations of Asia, Africa, and Latin America, which includes my own country, India too. Honorable Speaker, sir, 2 months after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, India's retail inflation jumped 8 years high by 7.79% and also remained above Reserve Bank of India's tolerance band of 2 to 6%, which was mainly due to massive surge in global crude oil prices that went $139 a barrel because of supply chain disruptions and multiple sanctions on Russia. India's inflation spiked again in January 2023 by 6.52% after remaining within 6% for 3 months on higher food prices. The same Russia-Ukraine war pushed India's repo rate 3 years high by 250 basic points. And the same Russia-Ukraine war recorded a 12% fall in India's exports, while imports dipped 3% to $58.2 billion, widening trade deficit as of December 2022. And now these masters and experts of geopolitics and world economy are now so easily claiming climate crisis to be a source that affects developing societies like India on their geopolitics, economics, and sustainability in the global race today. Honorable Speaker, sir, the ignorance of my fellow Treasury Bench members towards all the other potential risks which affects developing societies like India with their geopolitics, economics, and sustainability makes them look no different than the great Dhritarashtra of Mahabharata, who had the powers of 10,000 elephants but was not able to stop the evil deeds of his eldest son Duryodhana. Makes them look no different than the great mother Gandhari, who misused the boon of Lord Shiva to turn her evil son's body into steel so that he can fight against dharma and righteousness, and makes them look no different than all the warriors and experts of Hastinapur who closed their eyes and ignored the sufferings and injustices Pandavas and Bharat Kulvadu Draupadi had to go through. Honorable Speaker, sir, the global pandemic of COVID-19, which shook the backbone of the entire world economy, was barely noticed in the hours of baseless arguments forwarded by my fellow Treasury Bench members. The World Bank, International Monetary Fund, and other prominent international organizations clearly stated that the world economy started sinking as early as 2009. But the International Monetary Fund also predicted that the global growth, which includes the growth of developing societies like India also, will slow down by 2.7%, will slow down by 2.7% in 2023, as the worst of COVID-19's influence is yet to come. Honorable Speaker, sir, even after saying this much, if my fellow Treasury Bench members wants to stay constant to their decision to not repeal this bill, then all I can say is it is hard to win an argument with a smart person, but it is nearly impossible to win an argument with a person who is just pretending to be smart, just like my fellow Treasury Bench members in this House today. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, sir. Thank you, respected members of this House.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you. I will call the next speaker now. Another word of advice to all the speakers who will come after this. Kindly take the warning bell as the time when you wrap up your speech, okay? So that by the second bell rings, you are either over with your speech or you've completed, you are just speaking your last sentence. With that, I call the next speaker, Ronak Rupam Parathor. He will speak for the motion, and Ronak Rupam Parathor is from Jagannath Barooah College, Jorhat.
Am I audible? Yes, you are. You can start. My greetings. Honorable Speaker, sir, and respected members of the House. Welcome to Assam, my fellow parliamentarians. Take me at my word when I say that once upon a time our state was known for its dependable climate and bountiful rains. But now, on one hand, annual average temperatures are constantly rising. And on the other hand, annual rainfall patterns are becoming more and more erratic. Severe droughts and floods are becoming more common in the Brahmaputra region, as stated in the IPCC report of 2022. It can be easily guessed what will be the impact of such climatic events on a developing state like Assam, where the economy depends a lot on rain-fed agriculture. Understanding the plight of my own state and sympathizing with the plight of such developing societies all over the world, I stand in firm support of the bill tabled in today's House. Honorable Speaker, sir, yes, it is true that climate crisis does not distinguish between the rich and the poor nations, but it is equally true that the countries experiencing the worst impacts of the climate crisis are those that are at the bottom of the developmental ladder. This is mainly due to the fact that most of the developmental countries have a landlocked geography. Their economies depend on a non-modernized agriculture and fishing industry. A large section of their population depend on natural resources to meet their day-to-day needs. And they lack the sufficient funds to transition from traditional to greener sources of energy. Coupled with this fact that most of the developing countries have experienced historical exploitation at the hands of developed nations in the form of colonization. Honorable Speaker, sir, moving on to economy. Our neighboring country, Pakistan, underwent a loss of $30 billion to its economy due to a severe flood brought on by a premature monsoon. The IPCC report of 2022 has said that Mumbai alone will undergo annual losses of 126 crores due to rise in sea levels. Ahmedabad will undergo losses due to intense heat waves. And the production of wheat, a major export of our country, will undergo losses by up to 9%. Honorable Speaker, sir, a study from Stanford University have shown that if it were not for the negative impacts of climate change, the economy of our country would have been larger by 31% and the economy of Brazil would have been larger by 25%. Honorable Speaker, sir, moving on to sustainability. Sustainability basically has three important fundamental pillars: social, economic, and environmental. How is economic sustainability to be achieved when it is projected that by the year 2030, 135 million people of developing societies will be pushed below the poverty line? Honorable Speaker, sir, economic condition impacts social sustainability. When the economic condition of a family deteriorates, they are less likely to send their children to school, which in turn perpetuates the cycle of gender and other related inequalities. Honorable Speaker, sir, moving on to geopolitics. The maritime trade of many developing nations are at a risk because their important seaports are getting inundated due to rise in sea levels. Honorable Speaker, sir, when the economic and sustainability conditions of developing countries are decreasing, how are they to attract more and more foreign investments, which are extremely crucial for the development of these nations? The interpersonal conflicts are at a rise of 2.4% and intergroup conflicts are at a rise of 11.4% as stated in the IPCC report 2022. A scarcity of natural resources brought on by the climate crisis has led to geopolitical conflicts centered around the remaining resources left in these states. Honorable Speaker, sir, today is the birth anniversary of the Bard of Brahmaputra, Dr. Bhupen Hazarika. So let me quote from one of his famous lyrics. I quote, "Asi mukoli botahor ahjah nai, bonot nit bon nai sorai." I unquote, which is transliterated as, "There is no fresh air in the trees. The birds have deserted the forest, so have the trees." Thank you, Honorable Speaker, sir. Thank you, House.
Thank you very much. Just a minute, Ronak. I think I can see a hand going up. Somebody is asking.
I'm very sorry.
Yeah, I want to. Yeah. Can we give the mic to him? We are really running late, so somebody has to really hurry up and reach the mic to the person who wants to ask the question.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Diman Chakravarti. Sir, you have mentioned that 135 million jobs will be lost by the year 2030. Do you think that other factors like the prevalence of artificial intelligence would play a major role in this job loss rather than climate crisis? What is your stand on that particular topic?
Sir, with all due respect, I said that 135 million people from developing countries will be pushed below the poverty line. I said nothing about losses of jobs. And if you are so concerned that AI will lead to losses of jobs, the World Bank has also said that AI is going to create 900 million more jobs. So that is a good news, I would say.
Okay, thank you. I'll call the next speaker. The next speaker is Bhaba Sindhu Borthakur. Bhaba Sindhu Borthakur will speak against the motion, and he is from Nagaon College.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Respected Speaker, sir, and my dear House, good afternoon, everyone. I stand in the opposition of today's motion, and I start by saying, climate crisis is like a mangrove, but we Indians have learned to survive this and march out like a roaring royal tiger. Mr. Speaker, the Global Climate Risk Index 2021 calls India the 7th most effective nation due to climate change. But despite this, India has developed its policy response through emissions and programs to reduce its climate vulnerability. It is later under the chairmanship of our Prime Minister, 8 submissions was launched to adopt ecological sustainability in India's developmental path. The climate crisis haven't been able to bring India to its knees. It hasn't been able to be mighty enough to threaten India in its geopolitics. And I say this because here are some reasons, Honorable Speaker. The leader and a voice of the global South, India has emerged as one of the major figures in challenging the global North in every field. India getting the presidency in G20 is another proof that India have developed geopolitically, and all of them are leading our India to become the Vishwaguru. All of this is possible because we dealt with climate change more effectively. Honorable Speaker, through your consent, one of the Treasury Bench members have talked about the Paris Agreement. And let me tell him that the Paris Agreement is the one that India has dealt with very carefully and effectively, and India has met its requirement, and it is the only G20 nation to achieve the Paris Agreement. It delivered in letter and spirit, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, India is leading the global order forward in times of climate crisis. Energy and climate change mitigation are among India's priorities during its G20 presidency with focus on climate finance and energy. Honorable Speaker, India is the 5th largest economy in the world and have proven that with climate mitigation too, a country can grow financially. India's UPI have gone global and been accepted by countries like France, UAE, and Singapore. Isn't it development in economical side in the midst of crisis that the Treasury calls the climate crisis? Honorable Speaker, with more resilient and climate-friendly approaches, India is set to become 26 trillion economy by 2046. Honorable Speaker, through your consent, I would like to take this opportunity to speak for the Treasury Bench that one of their members have talked about measures need to be taken. And let me tell you through your consent, Honorable Speaker, that India have taken the measures through its Panch Amrit. That is the icing in the cake when PM Modi announced the Panch Amrit in the COP 2026 in Glasgow, where our country has taken measures. Honorable Speaker, through your consent, I would like to also talk about the goals set by India to be achieved by 2030 is the reduction of carbon, fulfill 50% energy requirements and 500 gigawatts by 2030, and is also set to achieve the net zero by 2070. Under evidence of India's sustainability, Mr. Speaker, India is ranked among the top 5 nations per climate change performance index in 2023. Honorable Speaker, the Treasury Bench talks about the fuel Indians need to have to grow up in this climate crisis arena. But let me tell you, the entire world is grappling with climate change, but India has shown the way to combat it. What happens in India doesn't only stay in India. India moves the global order on climate change. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, House.
Thank you very much. Before I call the next speaker, thank you very much. Baba, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Before I call the next speaker, I got a note sent by one of the participants who felt that one of my observations, an observation by the chair about regarding unparliamentary words. So I just like to clarify that I only used it as a word of caution. It in no way affects how the judges evaluate. And the second point regarding unparliamentary words are the, they are the discretion of the chair. The chair gets to decide what is unparliamentary, and at the end of the year, the Lok Sabha Secretariat accordingly publishes a list of parliamentary words. So what was not there in a particular year may be there in the following year. So there is no exhaustive list of unparliamentary words. It is entirely dependent on the chair. Having said this, I want to assure the participant that my observation in no way affects his performance or evaluation by the judges. The next speaker is Lashmita Bhowal. She will speak for the motion, and she is from JB Law College, Guwahati. Lashmita. wait for the bell to go. Mic is working?
Hello?
Yeah. Okay.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes,
Sir,
you are.
with the count. 3, 2, 1. Honorable Speaker, sir, with taking the advantage of Article 19(1)(a), I hereby... Okay, sorry. I'm so sorry about this, sir. I'm so sorry. It's my first time, so...
That's okay.
Can I start again?
Yes, please do.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Mr. Speaker, sir, taking the advantage of Article 19(1)(a), I, Lashmita Bhawal, stand here to support that climate crisis is all over affecting the geopolitical scenario, economic scenario, even extending to the health of the individuals onto a major extent. And so, however, the topic today here concentrates on specific topics like sustainability, economics, politics, and global race in today's world, and especially developing societies, as they say. So, coming on to the geopolitical scenario, as we know, whenever excessive rainfall leads to submerging societies, it eventually results in the migration of the illegal migration of people from one society to another. And it eventually leads or creates in the chaotic situation, scarcity of water, resources, and obviously security of the citizens of our nation, and obviously of the other nation who are migrating to our India. And obviously this is like a threat, and obviously it's a threat to people's life, right? So, and however, as we know, sustainability is balance, and this balance refers to the balance between the environment and the economic. And if there is no balance between these two, then there is no sustainability at all. And coming on to the economic scenario, the Reserve Bank of India's latest report suggests that about 4.5% of India's GDP could be affected by the year 2030, just because of this climate crisis that is occurring on a huge basis in the developing countries like India. However, this is really sad to accept that the opposition bench is so ignorant of the fact that they are completely ignoring the fact that climate crisis is affecting developing societies like India. However, as we all know, on the economic section, that 58% of India's population is dependent on agricultural produce for their livelihood. And this contributes up to 18% of India's GDP. So whenever there is excessive heat when there is excessive rainfall or no rainfall at all, or when there is excessive heat, eventually this results in affecting the economy of the nation. However, as we can see, whenever there is like 1/3 of the population of India works underneath the scorching heat of the sun. And this obviously reduces their productivity or working hours, eventually resulting in affecting the economy of the nation, their productivity. And this is how eventually they are affecting their own economy and also the economy of the nation, which is obviously not a tolerable thing, which is being completely ignorant by the opposition bench. And so, therefore, I come to the conclusion on saying to that denial is way easier than taking a stand. And I would obviously make a request to the opposition bench, then rather denying the fact which is so obvious to all the individuals sitting here, rather just instead of it, just...
Your time is up. Lashmita, your time is up.
Oh,
okay. You can complete the sentence.
Okay. So I was just saying, rather denying the fact, just give up ideas so that we can cope up with situations like this, which is obviously not invisible to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll call the next speaker, Nancy Singh. She will speak against the motion, and she's from... Nancy Singh is from Handic Girls College, Guwahati. The mic is not working.
Hello.
Yes. Yes. Please
Good
proceed.
afternoon, Honorable Speaker, sir, my respected jury members and the esteemed adversaries. Today, I, Nancy, stand here to question the notion that climate crisis affects the far-reaching factors of the developing country like India in terms of sustainability, economy, and geopolitics. Now, let me first go with the geopolitical factor. When it comes to geopolitics, And it's important for us to know that it's critically important that we should focus that climate crisis is not just a factor which is done by the developing countries or faced by the developing countries. With conferences like COP27 and attending and taking up the presidency of G20 summit, India is not walking the talk, whereas it's running the talk. When it comes to economy, India is the third largest production of renewable energy. Its goal is to achieve 50% of the renewable energy sources in future. When it comes to renewable energy, India is also focused on biodegradable waste management. And when it comes to its sustainability, it also focuses on the sustainable agricultural method. The NMSA, National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture, it focuses on the resilient agricultural method to provide necessary needs to the flourishing population, to feed its flourishing population. The EVs, electronic vehicles, which are encouragingly needed now. India also provides support to the electronic vehicles which is needed in a high time today. In conclusion, in summary, I would like to say that the nation, even if climate crisis, it poses a challenge to the nation, it will strive for its betterment, it will work for its betterment, and it will go on to making progress. Thank you.
You're just finished on time. Thank you, Nancy. So the next speaker is Arunima Dhar. She will speak for the motion, and Arunima is from the Assam Royal Global University, Guwahati.
Am I audible? Yes. Okay. As Winston Churchill once said, and I quote, "The era of procrastination, of half measures, of soothing and baffling expedients, of delays is coming to its close. In its place, we are entering a period of consequences," unquote. These words resonate deeply with our motion, which asserts that climate crisis will indeed have far-reaching implications on geopolitics, economics, and sustainability on a nation like India. Good afternoon, Honorable Speaker, sir, and the members of the House. Today, I take my stand here to vehemently support the motion of the House, which claims that climate crisis will affect developing societies like India with far-reaching implications on their geopolitics, economics, and sustainability in the global race today. Sheets of ice across the Arctic are melting, several species are losing out on their future, and majority of the world is getting affected by irregular climate patterns. Yes, the alarm is real and climate crisis is not a myth anymore. Speaker, sir, a report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change shows that if the temperature rises by 2 degrees Celsius, then most of the 70% of Earth's coastline will see sea level rise greater than 0.66 feet, resulting in increased coastal flooding, beach erosion, and salinization of water supply and other impacts on human and ecological system. The perils of climate crisis and the havoc it can wreak is more obvious now than ever. First of all, let's delve into the geopolitical ramification on the climate crisis of India. Geopolitics is not only confined to regional disputes and international relations. It encompasses a complex web of alliances, resource distribution, and global power dynamics. Speaker, sir, for instance, most of the agriculture in the 3 Indian states of Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and Andhra Pradesh depends on the southwest monsoon, which accounts for nearly 75% of rainfall in this geographic area. As a significant portion of the population depends on farming and the rainfall distribution in India is very uneven, the consequences of this uneven distribution would be tremendous. Adverse impacts on water availability due to decreased rainfall but also increased flooding in certain areas endangers the central part of the economy as well as the food security. Speaker, sir, now coming to the economic prospect. Even today, India, 75% of the population, which means 3 out of 4 people do labor-related works in areas such as agriculture, construction, as well as some unorganized sector. This 75% is almost 1/3 of our GDP. Speaker, sir, according to a report by McKinsey, due to heat waves, everyone's productivity goes down by 5 to 10%, which means that laborers will work less and cannot work to their full capacity. And now the question is, by how much? Up to 4.5% of our GDP, that is a $126 billion in a year. Speaker, sir, in this delicate tapestry of India's future, the looming climate crisis threatens to unravel the threads of sustainability. Yet, it is disheartening to witness the members of the opposition cloaked in the veils of their own perspective, remaining oblivious to this impending challenge. Speaker, sir, can the members of the opposition clarify how the increasing frequency of extreme weather events won't affect India's agricultural productivity and food security, which are crucial for sustainability? As I conclude, I would like to say that climate crisis is not just a challenge, it's a call for action. And so I urge you to vote in favor of this motion, understanding the importance of addressing climate crisis which will be benefit for all of the humanity. Therefore, I rest my case, but not my stance. Thank you.
Thank you, Arunima. I'll call the next speaker, Ravi Sharma. Ravi Sharma will speak against the motion, and Ravi Sharma is from Ramjas College, Delhi University. Ravi Sharma.